So in the recent Borderlands 4 showcase, we actually got a look at all of the gear and gear slots we're going to be farming up when the game is released. And there's actually some pretty big changes compared to all of the previous Borderlands games. So that's primarily what I want to go over. All of the types of gear we're going to be farming, some of the new stuff that's being added with Borderlands 4 and changed out from previous games, and go a little bit more into some of the new stuff we're actually going to be farming. But I'm not going to do a super deep dive into any of the weapons or any of the specific gear items, because I definitely want to do that in future videos because there's a lot of new interesting things. Now, first off, I think we have to go over Rarity. We have it confirmed that we are going up to Legendary Rarity. So basically the exact same Rarity system as Borderlands 3. You go from whites to greens to blues to purples to oranges, which are legendary. And there is a little UI element that actually shows this as these little triangles next to each other. And there is actually a UI element showing this, these little triangles that build up as you get higher rarity. We don't know if there's going to be like another rarity above that that's hidden or anything like that. It seems like we're only going up to legendary for at least the launch of Borderlands 4. And we get to see all of these gear slots through our new inventory. So up at the top, we have our 4 weapons where we're going to be able to have 4 different weapons equipped at once and switch between them freely within combat, which is pretty much how every Borderlands game has worked. And it doesn't seem there's any major changes to that system in general. Obviously, weapons are going to be working in quite a bit of a different way in Borderlands 4, going back to the more randomized manufacturer parts on weapons where you can get a weapon with like 5 different manufacturer parts on it that was similar to Borderlands 1, but I'll be going over that in another video. So this is just exactly what you'd expect. You have 4 slots, you can equip 4 different weapons. Borderlands has billions of weapons. That's going to be a lot of the variation in gear. But then we have some pretty big changes in the 2 next slots. The first one is the ordinance slot. Now this is actually a really big change from every Borderlands game because your ordinance slot is going to either be a grenade, so you'd put a grenade mod here, or you can also put heavy weapons here. So like rocket launchers, grenade launchers, the massive machine guns, and this is going to be a cooldown now. So you're not going to be having rocket launchers in your normal slots with ammo amounts. You're not going to be having grenades with ammo amounts. Those are going to go in the ordinance slot. They're going to be a different item that you equip in it, and they're going to have a cooldown. And we're not exactly sure how the cooldown works. It seems like these different items are going to have different cooldowns. It seems like grenades or specific grenades will have lower cooldowns. It seems like some of the bigger ordnance weapons will have longer cooldowns, and the cooldown is basically refreshing the ammo for your next use. And the main thing I think they're trying to accomplish with this is allowing you to use all of these big explosive heavier weapons more consistently and not feeling like you have to save them for a boss fight or bigger enemies. Now you just have that cooldown, which doesn't seem to be like a super long cooldown. I think for 50 rounds of a big like explosive machine gun they were using, it was like 50 seconds or something like that to fully refresh that. And that was at a lower level, so there'll probably be items to make that cooldown even shorter. So that's a pretty big new addition and change coming to the game. You're not going to be just equipping rocket launchers in your normal weapon slots. Now in the slot next to your ordnance, we have another new piece of gear, which are basically repair kits or repair items. It sounded like the developer called these something different, but that's essentially what these are. They were specifically talking about them as a repair item. This is also going to be on a cooldown just like ordnance. It's on the same cooldown, it's on a separate one, but on the left side of your HUD, you have this little kind of needle icon, and in the showcase, they used this. It gave them health and I think gave them shielding, and the developers also mentioned that this can give you other buffs as well, depending on which ones you have equipped. It could give you increases to damage, it could give you increased elemental damage, but I think the more base use of this is going to be health or shield healing, probably both on a cooldown. But then probably as you get higher rarities and probably as you get more into the end game, you'll more be using this as big damage increases or some other types of buffs. So this seems to be a pretty interesting new slot because the ordnance slot is still just using things we've had in other Borderlands games, grenades, rocket launchers, everything like that, just using them in a different way. This is something kind of completely new to the Borderlands franchise, be it this kind of on-demand heal and buffing And again, keep in mind, every single piece of gear also goes off of rarity and will also have different rolls on them. So every new piece of gear or change to how this gear works just adds a ridiculous amount of possibilities, because now you have these repair kits. You could get legendary ones with a bunch of different crazy effects. I'm sure there's going to be a bunch of legendary repair kits that just give like some outlandish effects, don't heal you, but give you some massive buffs or give you some big berserk effects or something like that. There's probably going to be some crazy stuff with this slot specifically. And that brings us to our final row of gear, which has 3 different item slots, one of which is another really big new addition. The other 2 are your shield slots, so that's exactly what you'd expect. We don't actually know if the shield is in the middle or on the left side. It's actually really hard to tell. You have your shielding, and then you have your class mod. These are going to probably work in a really similar way to every other Borderlands game. I think this is something that doesn't need change. These are obviously going to have all of the same rarity possibilities as other items. Class mods may be a bit different just because they have a lot more things to tie into from your class trees, including your Vault Hunter's passive trait, but it's probably going to work in similar ways. You're going to have a bunch of different options for your class mod. You're going to have a bunch of different options for your shield. And for our final piece of gear, we have the one all the way to the right, and we have a really big change because there are no more artifacts for Borderlands 4. Instead, we have enhancement mods, and these are actually doing a handful of different things. They're going to play pretty heavily into how you're creating your build, and more specifically, what weapons and weapon rolls you're trying to use. Because at a baseline, the kind of main effect for these enhancement mods are a special effect that buff up a weapon of a specific manufacturer or buff up a weapon part of a specific manufacturer, which is going to play really heavily into weapons in Borderlands 4, because you could obviously get one weapon with 5 different manufacturer parts, and you could still use one of these enhancements that buff up one of those specific parts. And on top of that, depending on the rarity of the enhancement mod, you also get more and more stats, because we got to see a green rarity enhancement that had its special effect. Then it had 1 stat increase, which was weapon status effect damage. We got to see a rare or blue enhancement that had its special effect. Then it had 2 stat rolls on it, which was ADS proficiency and accuracy. Then we got to see a purple or epic rarity enhancement that had its special effect. Then it had 3 stat rolls on it, and critical damage, accuracy, and weapon status effect damage. Now, there was a legendary in this character's inventory, a legendary enhancement mod. We did not get to see that. Presumably, it's going to have 4 stats on it, and also some probably much more unique special effect. And as mentioned, these enhancement mods are built around using a specific weapon from a specific manufacturer, or using a weapon with a specific manufacturer's weapon part on it. So for instance, the epic one we got to see had the leaper effect on it, which its effect was weapons with a Jacob's licensed parts. So keep in mind, it doesn't have to be a Jacob's weapon, just has to have those licensed parts on it, gain a 40% chance to ricochet non-critical bullets. So obviously we're getting the Jacob's effect from Borderlands 3 back, where you headshot somebody and it'd ricochet bullets around, which is actually really strong for some specific legendaries. Now you have a chance to do that without critical strikes, and you can also get that bullet ricochet effect from other manufacturer weapons if it has Jacob's on it. So there is some pretty crazy combinations that you'll be able to do with something like this. For the rare enhancement mod, we got to see what's called High Roller, and weapons with Ripper licensed parts increase weapon damage by 2% for each consecutive shot fired for a max of 25 stacks. So this is just a ramping damage boost if you have any Ripper parts on your weapon. So if you don't like Ripper weapons, you can actually still use a weapon that only has 1 Ripper part on it that maybe isn't super consequential. Still use this and get this stacking damage buff with a weapon that basically has no Ripper effects on it besides maybe 1 weapon part. And then for the final enhancement we got to see, it was Torg, and it was Exploception. Weapons with Torg licensed parts fire stickies that hit for a bonus 50% damage when first attached. Now, interesting with this is that it only wants Torg licensed parts, but it says with that, it'll fire stickies. It seems like this actually just adds this sticky effect as an additional effect to weapons that you have Torg parts on. So even if you had a weapon that didn't shoot out stickies, it seems like this would still be shooting these stickies to do that extra damage. So it's kind of just this additional damage proc that would probably have some additional damage modifiers, because the sticky would probably be an explosive explosive, so it would actually be something quite a bit different. Not sure how this would specifically work with different elements or not, so you could potentially be shooting out like poison stickies that explode. There's crazy possibilities with this new enhancement mod slot. But that's not all, because we're also getting what are essentially gear sets that we specifically got to see on these enhancement mods, but they are on other items as well. So some of these enhancements have this little symbol next to them on their item card, and when you scroll over it, it has this little section at the bottom that says some number out of 3. It has a symbol, and then it has a name. So it seems what's happening here is there is another special effect that's basically a gear set that you can get on your shield, your class mod, and your enhancement modifications. Now, we don't actually know that to be the case. We don't know if this kind of gear set bonus is on those 3 gear pieces or if they put them on like ordinance or anything like that. It seems like it's going to be on those 3 bottom gear pieces that we went over, but not 100% sure on that. We're also not 100% sure what these bonuses actually do. We do know these are basically a set bonus that are going to give you some other effect, some other power increase, but we don't know exactly what that is. We do also know in your inventory screen on the left side, there will be a little symbol that shows you how many out of 3 you have currently equipped, and there will probably be more boxes because it even shows you if you only have 1 of 3. So I guess there's the potential that you could have 3 different 1 out of 3 rolls of these new gear sets, and maybe you would be able to have 3 different new effects that have a lot lesser effects, or there's the possibility that you could only have 1 of these sets active at a time, so you just want to get 3 out of 3 on one set. We're not exactly sure how at all this is going to be working, but we know this is a thing, and we know this is going to play a pretty big role in creating your builds. Just adding this additional set effect to your pre-existing gear slots essentially adds more gear slots into the game, and Borderlands 4 has the most gear slots we've ever had from any Borderlands game. So it seems like even outside of just having more specific gear slots, we're also just getting much more complex and interesting effects upon those things, which includes this new gear or set bonus effect. But that's pretty much all the information we have for all of our gear slots going into Borderlands 4, and I am very excited about this. New gear slots with new effects, these new set bonuses or gear set bonuses mixed in with massively increased skill trees with more complexity just means that Borderlands 4 is absolutely going to have the most build crafting and the most possible builds of any Borderlands game by far, and that's something I very much wanted for the franchise. But that's all I want to go over, so thanks for watching.